Hi, I'm Christopher Hine, and today we're going to be talking about Myotoshi and Rokyo. So, Myotoshi is a technique. It's known by a lot of different names. In fact, the style I learned it in, we called it Kokyunage. But there are so many things called Kokyunage that when I started teaching, I needed a different name for it. So I pulled Myotoshi from another style of Aikido to use the term Myotoshi. It's a really good technique that I think kind of gets a bad rep because it looks kind of weird. And in fact, I believe it is just another variation on a Rokkyo. So we're also going to talk about Rokkyo in this, and I think Rokkyo is the big category, and Myotoshi is kind of a subcategory of that. But I'm going to get Josh over here. We're going to talk about it. Josh? All right, so today we're going to talk about Myotoshi and Rokkyo, and Josh is sporting the top knot today in true samurai fashion. All right, so what is Myotoshi? So we call Myotoshi this thing, right? So I'm sure your school has some name for this equivalent kind of technique. In this, the way it's kind of classically shown is the teachers will roll someone up onto the tip of the toes and then project them forward into the mat, right? And that's kind of the root idea or the thing you most commonly see in different styles. When I learned that, I thought it was really kind of dumb because I was like, well, who the heck's gonna stand there while you lift them off the ground like this and then project them forward? And I don't know, it just didn't make too much sense to me. But as I started to work with more live practice, I noticed myself basically doing that technique, and something that looked a little simpler than that, but basically doing that technique. And it would happen a lot if I was caught like this and I needed to turn quick and pop someone's arm off, right? And that's how I did it and saw it a lot. And so once I started doing that, I was like, oh yeah, this is a pretty legit technique, you know? But it took me a while to kind of figure out what all the little details are, right? So one part of that, I believe this part, is actually an attempt to clear. And no, he's not going to stand there generally while I do this. What he's going to do is hate that, and he's going to come off on my wrist, which is what I want, right? And so this is just a way to really extend into it, right? So as I'm twisting, I'm kind of lining up my arm a little bit and really going into the back of that elbow, and I'm using that elbow to raise him up, right? Now, a lot of times when you see it in schools, you'll see people kind of doing it like this, and this is a really impossible way to get this to come off. And you know, maybe I'm missing some subtlety, but I did originally learn it this way also. But this is a real difficult way to get anything to happen because he's really stable right here and he has no reason to want to move at all. And so I could probably wrestle with him a lot like this, and it's not until I add the emphasis to the elbow here. Now I could be here and put this on my body and use my body to do that. It's just not quite as tight. If I slide my arm over a little more, I get a little bit more out of it, right? And as far as the throwing goes, this is how I feel about anything. Sure, someone might be thrown by that, and it is called otoshi, and otoshi means to drop something down. So it could be that I did it really hard and they smashed their face on the ground. But in my opinion, it's more a hadoki, right? So the idea is more like hadoki, and kind of the way I teach everything is really hadoki at its core, and then if they stayed on, they would get thrown or dropped or whatever, right? But that's the basic idea. Seeing it from gyakute dori is a really nice way to see it. It comes off really, really clean, but it could come off lots of ways. It could have come off if he had something in his hand too, and I was holding it and trying to pop his hand off of it as well, right? So that's my basic idea with that. I think this technique is a Rokkyo technique, and so when I talk about technique, the technique of Rokkyo, I'm talking about the principle of locking the elbow out. So to me, anything that does this, hyperextends this elbow joint, is a Rokkyo. So anything that does that's a Rokkyo. So that means this, which is the classic Rokkyo, I'm doing that against my body here, so I'm pulling my body in and driving it like that, that's a Rokkyo. If you see any kind of variation of a throw like this, where it's on my shoulder here and I'm cranking down on this, that's a Rokkyo. So anytime I lock this arm out, so I think you just call it an arm bar in modern lingo, right? So anything like that would be a Rokkyo. So we're hyperextending the elbow. It's a really important principle because when I talk about the arm, I like to say that the arm really has three main configurations. That's hand up, hand down, and straight arm, right? So stuff for in Aikido that's for this is like the kotegaishi. Kotegaishi is for this. Stuff for things like this, or ikkyo, sankyo, right? So there's lots of stuff for that. For this, Rokkyo is our main go-to, right? And that's basically what's going to happen as I work this guy some way, right? So like, if I'm really trying to turn a kotegaishi hard and he wants to resist that, he'll lock that arm out. That immediately gives me this Rokkyo, boom, that I can turn into right here. So anytime I turn into that elbow right there, we're getting a Rokkyo. And so that's the principle of Rokkyo. And Myotoshi is just a variation on this principle of Rokyo. So understanding straight arms, super key. You got to be able to do it. There are times when other Aikido techniques will make good sense off of a straight arm, right? So like one of my favorite things to show is the Shionage, and I think in the Shionage talk that I did just a little bit ago, like 2 weeks ago, I talked about this, but if I'm really cranking here and he tries to pull his arm back, this quickly leads to a really nice Shionage. A really nice Shionage comes out of that, and that's because I'm trying to crank his arm there. And you might say, you know, why would you crank on his arm like that in Aikido? If I was trying to strip something out of his hand, so if he had something here, I'm pulling against it like this, and I should have grabbed something when I came over here, but, well, hang on. Movie magic. So if he had something like this, and I cranked on it like this and ground it back, right, you can see how I might need to strip like that. Now, if, as I'm trying to do that, he pulls his arm up and I turn, I can come in here and get all kinds of sweet stuff, right, from that. So basically, that straight arm bar is going to be essential anytime you're doing grappling over the arm. Why would we do that in Aikido? Well, because he's holding me, and so I need to clear my hand, or because he had something in his hand and I've got to take it out. That's why we would see it in Aikido. And that's all, of course, a holdover from classical Jiu-Jitsu. And understand that Jiu-Jitsu and Aikido are related in technical syllabus, but the principle of why you would use those things is different. So in Aikido, it's kind of anti-Jiu-Jitsu. I'm trying to get free and be autonomous, and then as I'm autonomous, I can make accords, which is what I want to do. And in Jiu-Jitsu, the purpose is to dominate them, to get on top of them and beat them and make them do what you want, right? So that's basically the difference between the two styles. But as far as technical syllabus goes, they're very, very similar because there's so much intersectionality between the two. So I hope that helped a little bit with Mae Otoshi and Rokkyo. I'm Christopher Hines, Joshua T. My Solano Daniels behind that center camera right there, doing some wiggle fingers. We'll see you in the next video.